Started. Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Mobile Apps, How to Plan, Execute, and Launch, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. Please mark your calendar for the next webinar in our Digital Bootcamp series, Keeping Up with Digital Marketing, A's for Your Q's, ChatGPT, on October 26th at 1 p.m. We are recording today's presentation, and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the session. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session, Cameron Nelson, Technology Advisor for the Virginia SBDC. Cameron has over 19 years of experience in technology and is a senior tech consultant in Silicon Valley, helping Fortune 500 companies improve their digital marketing and e-commerce. At the same time, he also founded several tech companies, including a software as a service website for tree preservation and a blockchain platform for nonprofits. Cameron is accomplished in language, culture, has an MBA and MA. He believes new technology products have the ability to help shape our world for the better. Please join me in welcoming Cameron Nelson.
Thanks for the introduction, and hello, everybody. Welcome to Mobile Apps, How to Plan, Execute, and Launch. This is a really exciting topic for all the businesses out there who are considering what it'll take to make a mobile app for their business. What are some of the benefits they can derive from that? What are the costs that would be involved and other considerations? So we're going to talk about all of that today. We're going to keep this presentation at a fairly high level because there's a lot of different experience here in the audience. Not everybody's a developer. In fact, probably most people here are not. So this is mainly aimed at a business owner or entrepreneur who's trying to learn about app development for the first time. And if you have more specific questions, we'll have some time at the end for your questions and a Q&A. So I look forward to answering more specific and detailed questions at the end of this presentation. So let's jump right into it. The first question that we should be asking is your business ready for a mobile app? Will you take the most advantage of it? Because the mobile app market is really crowded. There's a lot of apps there. So before you embark on this journey, it's essential you have the right strategy and mindset, and you have a good marketing plan for how you're going to get your app out there and how it's going to benefit your business. As we all know, there's two main platforms for launching apps nowadays. There's the iOS store, that's Apple, and there's the Android store, that's Google. The iOS store has right now 2.2 million apps in it. And in last year, it generated $86 billion of total sales for the owners of those apps. Now, in contrast, the Android Google store has 2.5 billion apps, or over 1,000 times as many apps. Yet, they generated less revenue of only $42 billion last year. So you might wonder, well, if there's 1,000 times more apps in the Google store, why did they cumulatively generate less revenue? It's because there's more apps that are free there. And it's also because the trends over time show that apps that are made for the Android platform tend to not be able to charge as much, just based on demographics of the people who own Android smartphones. Maybe they're not as willing to spend a lot of money on their apps. Whereas the iOS and Apple store, the demographics there point to a higher income level bracket, and these people spend more money and buy more apps. So one of your first choices is going to be, well, which store are you going to launch your app in? You can, of course, launch in both stores. That's completely fine. Keep in mind, it will increase your time and development cost by roughly 20 to 50%, depending on the features of your app. So it's hard to recommend one over the other without knowing the specifics of your business. But if you'd like to ask and give me more details about the type of app, I can maybe suggest which store would be a better fit for it. Regardless of which store or stores you decide to launch your app in, you'll need to ask yourself a couple of questions to make sure app development is the right path for you. First, are you ready to invest a large amount of time and money into developing this mobile application? For first-time app creators such as yourselves, it's a fantasy to think you'll be able to hire a developer or development team and not have to be involved almost day to day. So in the end, you will need to be involved almost day to day if you're going to get a good product. And I've seen many dozens of apps be developed for small businesses and startups alike. And this is a real risk that not every founder or business owner is aware of. So it does take quite a bit of your time. If you don't oversee, what happens is the apps can kind of get off track. Features you thought were really important might be kind of pushed to the sidelines in the app. They might not even work properly. So you do need to spend time giving feedback, testing, even finding bugs that the development team missed. These are often things that you will have to do yourself if you really want a high quality product. And also keeping in mind, there's a range of different development choices, which we're going to talk about. So some are more expensive and more professional, while others are cheaper, but might be not as professional of a product. So there's trade-offs with both cases. Some of the advantages for developing a mobile app is that, as you can see, there's billions of users for mobile apps worldwide. So it gives your business or your startup access to a lot of people who can possibly be generating revenue for your business if you're able to monetize them properly through the app and charge them and get them to pay for your services. It'll provide you an opportunity for good engagement with your customers because they're able to offer feedback either by reviews in the app stores, by contacting you directly through a contact email, or maybe on your social media page. But feedback and engagement with customers is key nowadays to successfully selling online. Third, apps provide an opportunity to increase your number of customers and your sales. Next, there's numerous ways to create mobile apps. So there's the two different app stores. There's also different programming languages, also known as frameworks, that you can use. Which language or framework is ultimately going to be best left to your developer because they're the experts on developing the software. So once you tell them the features and kind of sketch out what the app's going to do, the developers will help you find the best platform and coding language to write the app in. And lastly, a big advantage is you can often find greater profit potential with apps versus a business model that's maybe a brick and mortar store or something that has a lease or rent. Because with an app, you have none of that. You have a few expenses, which we'll talk about, but overall, your profit potential is higher with a digitally focused business than with a more old-fashioned or legacy type business that has physical presence and all those costs. However, there's also some challenges and cautions about creating a mobile app. One of the biggest reasons why I've seen mobile apps fail to deliver on the creator's expectations is because the time and the complexity of developing the app gets long and the scope of the app gets broad. So what that means is if you have an idea for an app for your business or startup and you think it should do three things, as you're developing it, you might find that you really want it to do 4 things or 5 things or maybe even 10 things. And this is very common, usually with first-time app developers or creators, because they just haven't gone through the thought process before. But if you add 10 things instead of 3 into your app, it's going to take a lot more time and money. So that's a real big issue that can sometimes sink a project before it can even get completed. Secondly, there can be other unexpected issues to come up with your app. Say, for example, you don't have a DUNS number, D-U-N-S. It's a Duns and Bradley. It's this number. It's kind of like an identifier for your business that shows that it's legitimate. Well, the app stores require you to submit a DUNS number when you're uploading your app. Some businesses and startups, they don't have a DUNS number, and it can take them weeks or even months to get one. So there's a lot of unexpected issues that can come up for first-time app creators. Another issue and a risk here is that your app might fail to come up with a new or innovative solution. So as we saw, Android has 2.5 billion apps. That's a lot of competition. So you need to be really sure that your app is hitting on a pain point and solving a pain point that is not being solved yet, or at least it's not being solved in your innovative way. You need to be really, really sure that that's true before you start spending money on this. One good way to be sure that's true is to do interviews or to get user feedback from your potential market for this app. The best thing to do is just to talk to people, either face-to-face, on the phone, over email. Any way you can get feedback, you want to make sure that people are excited for this solution and there's nothing else like it. Next, if your business or your company, a startup, doesn't have enough funds to finish the app, because of scope creep and adding more features, the cost can grow. Sometimes I've seen it double, sometimes I've seen it triple. And sometimes the founder has enough money to keep putting in and finish the app, but other times they run out of money. And so you want to make sure that before you embark upon this journey, that you've got the clear scope, clear definition of features, and also a buffer of funds. So if you're quoted it'll cost $1,000, I would at least have 20% or 25% buffer, because quite often there will be a few unexpected things that do end up costing a little bit more. And lastly, hiring the inappropriate development team can really sink a project like this, either due to poor communication between you and them, poor time management skills by them, they constantly miss deadlines, or maybe they have just a low quality product with a lot of bugs. I'm going to talk to you about how to find a good development team and some of the ways you can assess them before you spend money and hire them. So let's talk more about the difference between these two major platforms, because it really is a key thing to understand as you embark upon your journey. You're going to hear some of these terms and phrases, and if you're not familiar with them yet, you will be by the end of developing an app. So it's a good idea to get exposed to them early. So this criteria you should think about when selecting your platform, and of course you can build on both platforms, but the selection criteria should come down to, do you want quantity or quality? So as we saw, the iOS store, Apple Store, has fewer apps by a factor of 1,000, but has double the revenue last year. So they have higher quality overall, whereas Android has higher quantity. That also goes into the platform size and the development process. One of the platforms is quicker and easier to develop on typically than another. Typically, iOS and Apple, it takes a little bit less time to develop on, which can mean it's cheaper. Their approval process also varies between these two platforms and companies. To get approved to the Android store, it can take just 24 hours. Sometimes the Apple store will take longer, a week or even up to a month. So if you're planning on a quick launch and having some sort of a big launch event, you will need to plan accordingly for that process to get accepted and into the App Store. And finally, there's cost considerations. So just a little bit of terminology. The Android store and Android platform is on the Java coding language, whereas Apple is using the Swift coding language. No real difference as far as what they can do, but they just have two different languages. So if you find a developer who's an expert in Java, they might not be an expert in Swift and vice versa. Market shares, we saw Android has a much greater market share, much more apps, but less revenue per app. Globally, about 87% market share for Android. Of course, a lot of that is in other countries, Africa, Latin America, Asia, Eastern Europe. A lot of the demographics are primarily Android, whereas in the US and Western Europe, and I think most of China and some of Japan, it's more predominantly Apple. So it depends a little bit about where you plan on selling your product or service, which platform might be most appropriate. As we talked about, the complexity for Java, it can be a bit more time-consuming than with Swift. The approval process for Android is much quicker, however, and Apple is more lengthy. The cost for Android, typically speaking, is less than iOS. The Android is more than iOS, and iOS is a bit cheaper just because of the time difference in writing in Swift versus Java. And like we talked about, demographics, if you're selling to a slightly lower income group, or even in countries where that's the demographic, then Android could be a better bet. But if you're selling in countries that have the disposable income to either buy your app, if that's your business model, or to use your app to find your goods and services, then Apple might be better for the higher income group. The last factor here is the fee to launch an app on the App Store. If it's your first time doing it, Android charges a one-time fee of $25, whereas Apple has a $99 annual fee to be a developer and to have your app on their store. So next, we're going to talk about 8 key steps you need to develop your app, and we'll be exploring each of these 8 in more details on subsequent slides. Well, the first factor is doing market research. It's really important to fully and comprehensively think of who your target market is when you're making your app. You've got to find a problem and solve it in a unique and innovative way. And to help with this and make sure that you're doing a good job with your idea, you can get feedback. Secondly is scoping of the app. So creating that feature list again, and sometimes they'll just be short, like 2 or 3 features, 2 or 3 things you want the app to do. But you also might have a nice to have list or things that you would like to do if there's time and money available. So the minimum viable product, also called the MVP, is typically that critical list of features that you need in your app, or your app won't perform its function. And the other things can be nice to haves that you can develop in at a later date, perhaps. Or if there's more money in the budget, then you can develop in at the launch. The third step is finding the right developer and also identifying the right budget. So for this, I would always recommend you talk to at least 2 to 3 different developers, preferably from a range of experiences and even locations. You can compare local Virginia-based developers to offshore developers. You read a lot of reviews on them, not just what their testimonials on their website say, but look at some of the other apps that they've developed, ask for a portfolio of their apps, and you can read the reviews on those apps on the app stores to really see if their apps are high quality or if people are complaining about a lot of crashes or slowness. Step number 4 is business planning for your app specifically. So if you have an existing business, you've got your income, your expenses, your profit, you want to factor in how your app is going to impact that. What is your return on the investment for the app? So if you have $5,000 budgeted for the app, when are you going to see that return? When is the app going to start making a profit for your business? And this can help you determine what features and functionalities you need to have, which are the MVP list and which are the nice to have features. Because if you have some features that are going to end up costing a significant amount of money, but you don't have a clear business plan on how they're going to return that money, you might defer them to a later date. Also, in this step, you'll be thinking about your app revenue model. There's multiple ways you can create money from your app, and we're going to talk about all of those different ways and what might work the best for you. Step number 5 is your marketing approach. In this step, you're going to identify your target customers, but more specifically, you're going to build buyer personas by kind of segmenting them into different logical groups. For example, a good historical example of this would be like the soccer mom. So if you're selling, home products, one of your buying demographics might be the soccer mom, and that you might have certain needs and expectations for that demographic. So this would be a way for you to build your own buyer personas for your own business and how your app's going to sell to them. It's going to define their wants and their needs. And it's going to help you build a communication strategy or the right words to use to reach them and to sell to them. And this is important when you write your app description on the app stores. When you get a chance to describe it, you need to use the right language to target your specific markets. Step number 6 is you're going to build a prototype. A prototype is also called an MVP. And this is when you're going to have a working version that you at least are testing yourself on your own phone or the phones of trusted friends and colleagues who are going to give you realistic feedback. And you're going to incorporate this feedback, work with your development team, and iterate on the app. I can say for certainty that no app is ever launched the first time and it works 100%. There's going to be a lot of testing and a lot of iteration. The more testing and more iteration, it'll come down to the more features you have. So more complexity gives more risk of just things not working right in a beta stage, an MVP. So the goal here is to iron those out before you launch, so you find all the bugs before your buyers do. Step number 7 is launching the app. There's the beta tests that you can do, and we'll talk about those. And lastly is promoting your app. So all important, if you've done all the other 7 steps right, but you don't have a good strategy of how to promote the app or actually get people to see it, your app will probably fail. So we're going to talk about the main ways you can turn your leads or your existing customers of your existing business or interested people into paying customers using strategies like social media, paid ads, and even in-person events. So the first step is market research. And one of my favorite quotes by a very successful business person said, "Find a big problem that's just going to get worse and fix it." It's a really good saying for someone who's thinking of creating an app, because your app needs to be doing this. It needs to be finding a problem that you think is going to get worse and fix it in a unique and innovative way so your app stands out. There's 4 main phases to conducting market research to find this problem and also to make sure that your app's going to be a good fit. The first step is interviews. It's always good to speak to people and lots of from a bit different backgrounds, different industries, and talk to them and see, if you have an idea for solving a problem, just get their feedback. It saves you a lot of time and money. If you get feedback early that disproves your idea of an app, it says, well, this won't work. People find all these problems with my idea. Well, it's good to get that feedback before you've spent money. Once you've gotten some of that feedback, step number 2 is to narrow your focus. Keep your focus. You went from a broad focus with a lot of questions and possibilities in step 1 to a narrow focus. You're going to keep doing interviews, but you're now going to ask more specific questions to keep the data you collect more focused. You don't want to end up with too much data at this point, because then you're going to have more feedback than you can act on. You might have an app that tries to do 20 things when it should just be doing 2, and you need to define what those few features are going to be. Step number 3 is you can use forums to help you get this feedback more efficiently. So these would be just a simple forum like Google Forms. There's also Typeform and SurveyMonkey. These are all great services. They're going to be free to a certain point. You can use them. So if you want to collect your feedback and your data in a quantitative way, you can create these forms and send it out to people. Even if you've talked to people, you could follow up by sending them a form just so you have their answers down in writing, and all that data is able to be collected for you in chart and graph form to make it easier to make your decisions. And the last step is, after you've done all this research and taken up people's time, hopefully your target market, taken up some of their time, you're going to say thank you and keep in touch with them. It's always good to create an email list of people you've spoken with their feedback, comments, and even if they've not loved your idea, follow up with them and give them updates on the app development, because you never know, some of those might end up being users of the app and proponents for you and help spread the word. So the idea here is you get some early adopters from the people who you solicited feedback from. The second step is defining the scope of your app and developing a minimum viable product. This is an important step so that you don't end up going over budget and over time on your app development, which is, in my experience, the number 1 cause that businesses fail developing an app and get frustrated with the process, and it doesn't end up paying off for them. A minimum viable product approach, there's 2 triangles that kind of explain this. So you are looking to develop an app that is functional, the green, it's reliable, it doesn't have bugs, it's usable, it has a good user interface, it has intelligent emotional design, which means, well, essentially it's solving the problems that it's supposed to solve. So when you look at a minimum viable product, you don't want to look at making, say, one part, like the functional part, building that out. You want to develop a minimum viable product app that actually covers all 4 of these elements in a small sliver. And this is going to help you get an app out that does all of these things well enough to, again, gauge interest. And it's a quick and easy way to monetize the app early without spending a ton of time and money on it. But also, if your app is going to end up not working or failing or require you to pivot and change it significantly, it's much better to find that out once you've developed and invested 10 or 20% of the time and the money versus building out the entire app. So that's the benefit of the MVP approach. As I said, it's going to focus on building that core app first. It's going to give you the early testing opportunity. It's going to give you quick market valuation, and it's going to take less time. Here's another illustration showing this process in a different way. On the top, well, let's just say these are two teams of really smart people trying to develop a minimum viable product. And the top is the wrong way, and the bottom is the right way. So the first team decides, okay, we want to build something that's like a car. So how are we going to do that? We're going to start with a wheel and then connect it, build a skateboard, half a car, then a full car. So the problem here is that essentially none of the steps until you get to the car do anything, right? They're not fully functioning products. But contrast that to the bottom. So they still want to build a car, but in this case, they start with a very basic mode of transportation like the skateboard, improve it with handlebars, turn it into a scooter, turn that into a bicycle, then a motorcycle, then a car. So when you develop your MVP, think of it in a similar way, that your first version that you're going to spend less time and money on is that skateboard. Even if you have the car in mind and that's where you want to get to ultimately, you're going to save a lot of time and money just designing and building out that skateboard first. And then you go through those phases until you get to your final product, which might be years and years down the road, pending success of the first versions. And that's why you want to build an MVP. The third phase of successfully developing your app is selecting the right developers. I've worked with developers in the US on the East Coast, in California, and also offshore in places like India, China, and Eastern Europe. There's a myriad of pros and cons. I'm going to summarize them for you. When it comes to the quality of the app and the final product, the quality is going to be the same whether it's US-based or offshore. This is because developing an app is very mathematical. It's a lot like writing mathematical formulas and equations. And there's really smart people in India, China, and Europe that can do that just as well as folks in the US. So the quality ends up being pretty much the same. The next factor is communication. So communication with US-based firm is almost always going to be better than with an offshore firm. This is for a couple of reasons. One, they're in a much closer time zone, so meetings are more convenient. Secondly, they're native English speakers without an accent. In India, they're native English speakers too, but the accent can sometimes and oftentimes trip up Americans, I've seen. And also culturally. So US-based developers, developers have the same culture. So sometimes it's easier to get your meaning across. And I've seen lots of times when there's a intent of someone in the US trying to explain to a developer in India, China, or Europe, and they're just not getting the message across. So that can be frustrating for US-based businesses. So that is a big pro for US-based developers. The time it takes to build an app, again, is very, very similar between these two options. The cost is significantly higher in the US than offshore. So I get asked a lot, well, what can I expect to spend on an app? That's really down to the features that it's going to have and the complexity. But I can give some generalities as far as hourly rates. In the US, a very inexpensive developer, someone who's not super experienced, would probably be $100 an hour just to start, and that's about the cheapest. A more experienced or reputable developer is about $150 to $200 an hour. In India, that I worked with a lot of Indian developers in the last few years, their rate is about 1/4 of that. So you can get really experienced developers for $20 to $30 per hour. So the cost is going to be significantly cheaper going offshore. And the last criteria is the long-term commitment. Are these developers going to just leave after the app is done and you won't be able to reach them anymore? No, in both scenarios, they like to be your partner and they'd love to help you build out the app further and add new features for years and years to come. So you're going to get a good long-term commitment with either option. So at this point, you might be wondering, well, which one is best for me? Oftentimes with small businesses in the East Coast and in Virginia, I recommend some offshore options because of that cost savings. Obviously, cost is a big factor to small businesses. And when you can spend $3,000 instead of $10,000 on developing the app, that's often the decision maker for them. But if you have any questions about the considerations, I'd be happy to talk about those more in the Q&A. So make sure that you ask them then. The fourth factor is how you determine your app cost and your revenue. So what's your return on the investment going to be for your business if you develop the app? So there's several different app revenue models. Any of these are valid and functional. It depends on your specific situation and needs which model or combination of models is going to make the most sense for you to monetize your app. The first model is in-app advertising. It's something we've all seen. It'll pop up a banner someplace on your app that you will specify the location and the size, and it'll fill that banner with some content that is not under your control. And the goal here is that someone using your app will click on the banner and generate a little bit of revenue for you, typically 1 or 2 cents per click. And so if you have hundreds of thousands of people using your app, you can make some pretty significant revenue from advertising like this. But if you have, say, a couple hundred users, the most you're going to see is, maybe $1 a month. So it wouldn't really be probably worth it. So it depends a lot on and how big your app is, and also can annoy users if it's overused. The second model are the in-app purchases. This can make your app free, but to unlock certain features or purchases, you can have that available like as a button somebody will click in the app. So the pro here is that you can get the app out there for free and kind of hook people, and it'll make your app grow faster. But then when people find that they really, really want this feature that is paid, you have to pay for, then hopefully they're going to decide to pay for it. Now, keep in mind that both app stores charge around 30% of revenue for any in-app purchases like this. Recently, Google and Android changed their policy and have lowered this to around 10 or 15% if you're making, I think it's less than $100,000 a year. So if you're a small app, they charge less than 30, but last I checked, Apple was still at 30%. So it's a really big expense that you will have to pay for if you have any kind of in-app purchases in the app. The next model is a subscription model, where you will charge either a monthly or an annual fee for someone to get access to the app. A nice thing about this is that it gives you consistent cash flow, because somebody might, pay you $5 a month, month over month over month, because they find value in the app and the features that it offers. Whereas it's not really suitable for all types of apps. If you're not providing new content on a regular basis, a subscription model might not make sense. The freemium model is similar to an in-app purchase model, where you give the app away for free, and you're going to charge users to upgrade while they're in the app to get access to new features. So you can see this is a very similar model to in-app purchases. Typically, in-app purchases, as somebody's navigating around the app, they'll find things that you have to pay for, whereas a freemium model will maybe package several pro features and then unlock them all once you've upgraded from the free to the paid version. And it can be difficult to determine which features should be free versus paid. As the creator of the app, it can be really hard to know what somebody's willing to pay for versus what they'll just walk away from and not use the app if you charge for it. So good feedback from your in your feedback phase and in your questioning phase is critical here to ask those people, well, what would you be willing to pay for? Fifth are the paid apps. Paid apps is they have to purchase upfront before they can download and install your app. It's good because you're not giving the app away for free, and so you're going to get a predictable amount of revenue. If you've got 100 users, you're going to have $500 of revenue if it's $5 an app, and you're going to earn that in advance. You're also going to pay around 30% to the app stores of that money. The con here is that there's a lot of apps on the stores. The competition is very fierce. And if you really don't have a unique or innovative app, there's probably a free version that's doing something very similar. And so you might lose a lot of users to the free version who just decide it's not worth paying for yours. So if you can't make that differentiation of quality and features significant enough, trying to charge for your apps right up front can be a hard sell. And the final way to monetize your app is through a sponsorship. In this case, you might have, let's say your business is selling baseball mitts and baseball gloves and baseball bats. Maybe you make a partnership with Dick's Sporting Goods or some large company. They will most likely advertise on your app and in your website even, and in exchange for that, they'll pay you. So it can be useful for lots of different types of businesses. Most likely there is some business out there that might be interested in sponsoring you in exchange for exposure. But it does require you to have a very large user base to make sense for the company like Dick's Sporting Goods. So you probably need to be in the realm of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users of the app before anybody would consider wanting to sponsor you and pay for your app through the revenue, advertising revenue they would generate through it. So, any of these 6 can be valid. There's even some others that are not included here that are less used. So if you have questions on which revenue model would be best for your specific business, please jot down those questions and we'll get to them once the presentation's over. The 5th step is marketing your app. So you've got to develop a good marketing plan, and this is really important to do before the app's launched, because you'll need to most likely get your marketing started in conjunction with launching the app to have it be a successful launch. So there's 3 main factors to look at when you're marketing your app. The first one's going to be you need to identify your target customers and build out personas of your buyers. And the personas are just segmenting them either by age, by income, by location, by any other demographics. It's going to help make it easier for you to market to them and communicate to them, because you're going to know what are they looking for, where do they look for their information, do they look on news sites, on social media, and tap into what's driving them to buy your product. This can help you sell to them. The next step is to formulate your marketing message. And once you've determined your customers' needs and wants, it's going to help you create that text. If you're interested in learning how AI and ChatGPT can help create your marketing text, we're going to be talking about that next month through my bootcamp at the Virginia SBDC. So I encourage you to attend there, because this step number 2 can be very time consuming. Step 2 and 3 together. Business owners can spend dozens and dozens of hours talking to people, researching their demographics, and then trying to create the best message to sell their product to them. A platform like ChatGPT, as we're going to see in a month, really accelerates this process, maybe cuts down on your time by 98, 99%, and gives you really excellent marketing material that you can use in selling your app to people online. So tune in for that, and more details of that will be coming soon. And step number 3 is to build your strategy to reach your customers. And this strategy typically includes your social media posting. What is that like? How does that engage with your customers? What images do you use? What videos? Any paid ads? You'll typically run these on Google and Facebook. And if you want to do traditional advertising, it's always an option. I've known some entrepreneurs who have, when they launched their app, had a party, a physical party where it was catered and they had events, kind of create some interest in their local community for the app. And that helped it to be really successful. In this case, it was an app for event management and event preparation and planning, I should say. So it was a really successful way to get the word out about this app. So yeah, you can think of other, in your target market with your industry, what type of physical or traditional advertising methods might work best for you, and incorporate those into your digital marketing strategy. Step number 6 is to build a prototype. So a prototype can start with something like these wireframes here. And you'll see in this example, the wireframes are simply that. It's like a black and white, or it is outline version of your app without many of the graphics or the bells and whistles. It's just a 2D look. It's going to show somebody when they start on the home screen what the buttons they can press, where those buttons take them. So you can see the home screen here goes to the agenda view, which can go to a conference page, which can go to some reviews. So you would design a wireframe like this for your app. And it's a critical step. Any design team or developer team you hire will certainly do this. And if you spend some time developing wireframes yourself, you can then just pass them along to your developers and save a lot of time and also money. So there's a few good tools that you can use completely for free to help you wireframe your app. And it's actually a lot of fun. You get to drag and drop little icons and you get to make them clickable links to other pages. It's not intimidating at all. It's anybody can wireframe an app. I recommend checking out Just in Mind, Mockflow, or if you like Adobe products like Photoshop, there's Adobe XD. These are three really solid options. Again, all free, and you can save what you've created and send it to your developer team. You can also save what you create here and show it to other potential users or friends and colleagues to get their feedback. And so getting feedback on the wireframes is a really important step. I recommend you spend some time doing it before you share them with a developer, because this feedback is going to help identify problems or gaps in the logical flow of the app, which should be addressed. And you don't want your developer finding these and wasting their time fixing any kind of mistakes. So you want to do as much of that as you can first. There's a few good ways to get and incorporate user feedback. You can create a website for the app. Now, if your business already has a website and you think the app is going to be an integral part of the existing business, you can mention the app is coming on the website and even have a link to a place where somebody can download a beta or even review the wireframes if it's appropriate. You can also go to Slack or Discord, which are two popular chatting platforms. You can create a channel there and you can solicit people to come and review your wireframes and give you feedback. So this can be really good ways of getting that feedback for free. Secondly, you can send out surveys and ask specific questions about aspects of your service. And you can ask about somebody's experience if they've went through your wireframes. And you can also offer a feedback reporting option in the app itself when it's in an MVP stage, because getting feedback in every stage of the app development is just really critical to its success. So you want to make sure that's easy for people to give you feedback. If they find something that's broken, for example, they'll let you know and you can fix it before it becomes a big problem. And lastly, social media is a really good place to ask for feedback on your wireframes or when you get there with a MVP or a beta build, because people tend to express their feelings more freely on social media than in other online platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are three prime examples of places where you can create a free page or profile for the business or for the app. You can post in it and you can put links to the wireframes there and ask people to review them for you. And you might be surprised at how willing strangers are to do that for you and give you their feedback. The next step in your app launch is the beta testing phase. So beta testing is something somewhat optional. It usually goes between the final launch and the testing you've done yourself and with your close colleagues or friends and family. Beta testing is often released to a broader group of people with the same intent of having more people try it out to find bugs, to test it and give you feedback. So there's two types of beta tests that are common in the industry. The first one is a closed beta test. This is also sometimes called a private beta test. And this will just be released to a small group of people and usually by invitation by you. So this can be 10, 20, 30, 50, maybe even 100 people, but it'll mostly be people you know, and nobody's going to be beta testing it who you're unaware of, who you didn't invite. The other type of beta test is an open beta test where you would post a download link on something like a social media platform and just let anybody out there who's interested to test it out, to download it, to use it, and to give you feedback. Now, both of these serve the purpose of having bugs reported to you, anything confusing with the app, brought out into the open early so you can fix it quickly. And you're going to get it tested by a wide user base using a range of devices. So let's say you develop your app for Android and iOS, which is a common approach. You might find that on Android, a certain feature works fine, but on iOS, the feature is broken or doesn't work 100% properly. And it can be hard to identify all these things on your own, so that's why a beta test is good. Typically, the bigger the better. And you want to limit the duration of a beta test. So you want to say, be specific that you're doing a beta test for 2 months or 3 months, something like that. And it's going to give your beta testers a sense of urgency to actually use the app and get back to you if they want their voice to be heard, especially if it's an app they're interested in using because it's innovative and unique. They're going to want to see the app succeed so it gets updates and they can use it more. Lastly, we're going to talk about how to promote your app. You know, the best apps that do well on the stores, whether it's iOS or Android, have a good promotion strategy, also known as a marketing strategy. So we're going to talk about the 4 key components to promote your apps. The first one is your website. And so having a website for your app will increase the legitimacy. It'll increase the perception of quality, because apps without a website behind them just seem a little bit more insubstantial or maybe less reliable. So if you have an existing business, like I said, and you already have a website, if you feel like doing it, you can add on a section or a page about the app. Or if you think the app should have its own website, you can get a domain name for $10 or $15. You can give it its own website and promote it directly. This is also going to help give you another funnel for customers finding out about the app and therefore your business. And you're going to build a user base and a following by having your own website. Secondly, you should promote your app on social media. As we said, it's a good place for people to give honest and candid feedback on features they like and especially don't like on an app. And by making free organic posts, you can promote on social media and have a presence there. So the main social media systems, platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram give you great access to a large user base, really of billions of people. And you create a post, it'll go out to a vast amount of people with different backgrounds and in different industries, so your audience can start following you. And you can use hashtags to be more relevant to, if you're trying to target people who are searching for specific things, you should use hashtags in your ads, in your posts. And when you decide to expand your social media marketing, you can do paid ads, which will help draw more people to your app. And here you can limit the ad reach to a geographical region. So let's just say you have a ice cream parlor in Washington, D.C. You just want your ad to be shown to a certain demographic, geographic region, so as to not waste money on people too far away to go there. So you can specify this in your app settings and not waste money on people who are not going to be your target market. Third is the value of public relations and networking. So with your business, you probably have an expansive network already. You should definitely tap into them as you're creating and launching your app to get their feedback and be some of your early users. You can create a press release if your business is kind of that size and has that kind of reach and ability. Also, a launch party can be a very popular way to spread the word about a new app. You can also reach out to interviewers or newspapers or tech bloggers or somebody who's in your industry and just introduce yourself and express interest in talking about your innovative and exciting app with them to get some visibility. You can also offer to write for blogs and do some guest blogging to talk about your app and get in front of a broader audience. And in some cases, having an influencer or celebrity endorser can be a key driver to making an app really sell. I've worked with startups who went down the road of finding and paying for an influencer to talk about their app during the launch, and it drastically helped them. They got thousands of downloads within the first 24 hours, and they contributed primarily to the influencer that they had helping them. So if you have a marketing budget, having that can be a real benefit. You can start by thinking about, are there influencers in your industry or your geographic region that would be good for you to work with and connect with on your project? And they can talk about your app on their social media channels or their blog. And these are great ways to attract new people to your app. You just want to make sure that the app is going to be aligned to that influencer's skills and experience and who their target market is, so you don't waste any of your time and money getting it set up with an influencer who's not perfect for you. So those are the key ways that I found to help you launch a successful app. There's a lot of other things and strategies and probably questions that you have. So now I'd be happy to open up some questions. You can type them in the Q&A box, I think would be the best. And then we will go through as many of those as we have time for. Well, I want to thank you today for your participation. I hope this was useful. And now I look forward to answering some of your questions.
Yes. So Cameron, we don't have anything in the Q&A box yet, but please drop some questions in while we have Cameron's attention. I just put up the poll too. If you all don't mind taking a few moments to fill out the questionnaire, it's brief, just helps us moving forward to present these to you in a way that makes most sense and is most helpful to you all. Wow, you must have done a great job because there aren't any questions. And we will be sending out these slides and the recording. So,
yes.
A lot of great information. Oh, we have something. Are there any techniques to demo an app?
So when it comes to demoing an app, there's two different ways to think about it. There's first the phase of your wireframes, where I recommended you go and use one of the platforms to create the very simple 2D outlines of the app. All of those platforms will let you share your wireframes and let people comment on them. So that's in a way of early demoing your app. The other way of demoing an app is in the beta test, the beta phase. And depending on your developers and what platform they're creating the app in, there's going to be different ways of distributing a demo of your beta app for people. Either it'll be like a direct link you can email to people, or you can have a code that somebody uses to download the app. So there's various ways that can be done. But typically those are the two times when you'd want to demo an app prior to launch, would be in the wireframe stage and then in the MVP stage.
We do have a couple questions coming in now. Is there any non-code or low-code application to deliver an app?
That's a great question. It's a common question. And what it means is, instead of hiring a developer who's going to write all the code from scratch, is there a way that a non-developer can drag and drop things on, say, a website to build an app? The answer is not really, not reliably. The reason is because there's a few platforms out there that give the promise of letting this happen. But unless your app is very, very basic and it doesn't do much, you're going to run into limitations where those platforms aren't sufficient. So if you just want somebody to log in, browse through some pictures, videos, or text, and maybe fill out a submit form that goes to you, that's like a very simple app, then yes, that can probably be made with like a no-code option, just to drag and drop elements on a screen. But most every business out there will require more sophistication than that can offer. So for that, you'll need to work with a developer.
Okay, let's see. How do you protect your app during the development process? When you're sharing your concept with developers and others for feedback, how can you protect the vision and prevent others you're sharing with from stealing your work?
That's a great question. Intellectual property is a risk, and a lot of founders are very concerned that their ideas would get stolen if it was a valuable idea. One of the most common things you can do is have your development team sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Developers all over the world are very familiar with that, and they shouldn't bat an eyebrow if you ask them to, even before you have an initial meeting with them. So that should be something that is commonplace. You can find a simple NDA form online and then usually customize it with your company and fill in a few details. So that's something that is just a good first step. That means if it's found out that they do steal your idea, then you have legal recourse in court to sue them, get some money back. Other than that, it's just a good idea to vet who you talk to. Meet with them at least over video a couple of times before you hire them. See what your sense is from them and their team. Do they seem trustworthy? Also read reviews on their previous work everywhere you can. Like I said, you can get a portfolio of the apps they've made and then read the reviews on the app stores to really see what the end users feel about the apps. And overall, you're trying to get a sense of their honesty. Like with many industries, not every player out there is going to be 100% honest, so it can be hard to tell. But for the most part, the vast majority of people won't have any problem with somebody trying to steal their idea. But I think an NDA is a good first step. And then again, educating yourself by reading reviews.
How would you go about doing raffling items online?
Well, I know raffling items online in different states, they have different legal requirements. So you'd want to check if you're in Virginia versus Maryland. There's certain legal things you'll have to follow. For example, I think some states require you to be a registered company or maybe a nonprofit. So it does vary a little bit. But I mean, there's probably a lot of raffle apps already out there. So if you're thinking of creating an app that's specifically to help people raffle items, you'd probably want to do your research and see what those other apps offer and see, is there really room for another app in that space? You'd have to have a really innovative idea and an interesting twist on that, I think, to make a impact there, because I'm sure there's dozens or even hundreds of raffle apps that are kind of already in this space. So I think it's important that you would talk to a lot of people and test out your assumptions of, can you make a better app or more user-friendly app than those competitors?
Okay, this one's a little long, so I'll read through, and if you need deciphering, we'll see if we can get some more information
Sure.
on this one. So I have an app idea, but I'm not sure if I should start it as a business or research. My goal isn't about making money, but using the app to help gather and communicate with vulnerable populations and collect the data. It has a research focus, but I want it to be practical, used by frontline nurses, public health. Any thoughts on pros, cons of starting with research versus business?
Well, I think it's fine. There's a lot of apps out there whose goal is not to make revenue for the app creator necessarily. They could be put out by nonprofits, by government agencies. So it sounds like if you're gathering research, you might be more of a, I don't know, like a nonprofit stage at this point. So I don't know what the kind of the legal structure of the business would be, but you could think of it like that you are going to invest a certain amount of money to develop an app, and the goals are to collect data. I think that's perfectly fine. A few years ago, I worked for a nonprofit in DC that was doing conflict resolution and humanitarian work, and they had various forms of electronic data collection. How was the performance of their program in Africa recently? And one of the ways they got this was apps that people could submit their feedback on through the app. So certainly a lot of organizations are doing this. I'm sure in the health and medical space as well. So I don't see any problem with it, as long as you have the funding available to, of course, create the app without needing the revenue from it right away, because it sounds like revenue might be a slower thing. But yeah, I think that it sounds like a good idea.
If my business-to-business app is already in production, how can we demo it to prospective clients without touching production data?
Yeah, so most times you will set up a demo account and put in demo data. And then when you go to give a demo, you will log into that account to see the data that's, of course, not proprietary to any of the actual clients. So as far as creating a demo account goes, that's usually something that's best decided upon with the developer of the app. Usually the developer will help create the account for you and show you how to populate it with information. But yeah, that's a very common practice, creating a demo account. So that shouldn't be a problem. If you already have an app, it sounds like you do, then you should be able to get in touch with the developer and just say that's something you need to get set up.
Right now we have one more question. The two sites you indicated one could tinker with a wireframe was Just in Mind and Mockflow. Are there others?
Yeah, and there's a third, Adobe XD. And also this presentation and those links will be emailed to you after. So you will just be able to click on that slide and see those. Those are the three that I've worked with, and probably three of the best, but there are many, many wireframe platforms out there. I mean, probably 50 or 100. So it's a bit overwhelming of which one to start with. I think that any of those three would be solid choices. So if for some reason you find none of those are fitting your needs, then you can just Google mobile app development wireframe creator, something like that, and you'll find a lot of other options.
All right, we still have a little time. If anyone else has any questions, go ahead and drop them into the Q&A, please, and we'll go ahead and address them. In the meantime, Cameron, if you have anything else you want to add, I guess you could chit chat.
Yeah, I think that all the questions were great, and yeah, I know it's hard sometimes to be starting at the beginning of this process, and there's a lot to think about and a lot to get through. And for some of you, maybe making an app is not the right thing, and it's good that you learned that early. But for most of you, I think it comes down to, yeah, putting in the time to do the research, create your own wireframes. It's really invaluable experience to gain as a business owner, and it'll save you time and money in the long run.
We had another question. How much does an influencer typically cost?
That's a hard question to answer. It depends on your industry and, of course, how popular or big they are in the industry. So if you're seeking a local influencer for a mid-sized town, someone who's like a local person, local celebrity, I mean, you might get them to talk about your app for $500 or $1,000. If it's somebody who's nationwide or international, the sky's the limit. They get approached by a lot of businesses to work with them and to promote their products. So you can imagine they have a fairly high limit of what they want to work with. But yeah, I think it depends on who, and also if they're really interested in your app, if they feel like your app is solving a problem that they're passionate about. I mean, let's just say your app is in environmental sustainability, and they're a big proponent for environmental sustainability, and you talk to them about your app and they really believe in your vision and really believe that it's going to solve the problems that they're passionate about, you might find that they just donate their time for free. So it's always good to reach out to people, and the better connection you can make with them, the better your chances of getting them at a reasonable price, or maybe even just to donate their time.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I will go ahead and I guess close us out for today. I do thank everyone for being here, and Cameron, thank you for all this wonderful information. As we said before, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and to the slides. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. This webinar and other SBD resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. We do hope to see you at our next session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.